Yaya, if you can just take us through the experiences of people in the LGBTI community in South Africa. What do they go through?
It is, okay, good morning, everybody. Yeah, it is so unfortunate that we've got this amazing, wonderful law and constitution in South Africa, like on paper, but unfortunately it does not translate to reality.
Would you say that people are feeling more and more vulnerable to incidences of violence and prejudice that's being faced by people in the LGBTI community?
Being vulnerable, I'd say, is like such a big word. People are like oppressed, literally oppressed. I look at where I come from, in the rural areas of KwaZulu-Natal, in Kranskop, and when you say transgender, people are thinking, what is she talking about? And for me, I really blame it on education. Yeah. The education system in South Africa, it's so bad that it has not really brought people into LGBTI issues. And even the ones that have actually gotten to a chance to understand what is LGBTI people about, but they choose to say, you know what, these are my rules, and I will do as I please, regardless of what the Constitution says. And for me, that is so unfortunate.
And before we go to Elliot, I heard you say something very horrifying to Lindy, my colleague, you know, during that package. You say that your experience at police stations has not been good.
It has not. Tell you what, as someone as brave as myself, I've had like so many incidents where my cases has not been resolved. For instance, like now, I was renting an apartment in Parktown, and I was assaulted by security with a friend of mine, and to date I have not had justice with my friends. And for me, I ask myself, what then happens to somebody who actually can't even get to a police station? If they do even happen to get to a police station, what then happens to them? You know, for me, then we really have a long way to go. We have a Department of Community of Safety right just up the road in Johannesburg CBD, which is like not far from a Hill proposition where I opened my case, but we still have those issues. For me, it's a huge problem.
And now to bring in our researcher and activist, Elliot Kutsia. Elliot, if you can just explain to us if you believe that the rights of people in the LGBTI community are adequately protected in a country like South Africa.
Good morning. I think that we have the laws in place, right? We do have the constitutional protection. We do have, on paper, South Africa is great for all gay people, lesbians, transgender, intersex, all of us. However, I agree with Yaya that education is a massive problem. And I'm not only talking about education in terms of schooling. I'm also talking about education as being a whole system-wide thing. So when we talk about the police not knowing how to deal with LGBT issues, if we're talking about home affairs dragging their feet, with trans name changes or same-sex marriages, we're talking about institutional systemic oppression, to use Yaya's word. And that systemic oppression can only really be addressed if we have systemic education around LGBT issues.
Well, Elliot, if I can just come in there, I see that, you know, the continent, things are not really looking good. Around 33 out of 54 nations, you know, are forbidding homosexuality. Now, as a researcher, what are you finding, especially when looking beyond the South African borders?
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's 20 out of 54 countries that have or where LGBT acts or acts of homosexuality, as they call it, are not illegal. The majority of countries in Africa criminalizes homosexual or same-sex sexual acts. Then we're not even getting into the transgender population. Even more countries, I think it's only 3, where transgender rights are actually protected. And South Africa is one of those countries.
And how do we change some of the perceptions around people living in the LGBTI community?
Sure. Okay. So we're coming
education.
back again to education.
Yeah.
But also, you know, you have to think about what happens in the home. When children are little and parents or family members talk negatively about LGBT people, and those children themselves grow up to be homosexual, transgender, bisexual, whatever, it makes it extremely difficult for people to come out and live fulfilled lives. And then they just face further oppression as they go out into the world. We also need to think about the oppression of queer rights in a sort of an intersectional perspective. So you think about if you are a white gay man, for example, and you are cisgender, in other words, not transgender, your rights are pretty solid. You for the most part, you have a happy life, you have white privilege, you have male privilege, you're just a bit queer. However, when you look at the bottom of the pyramid, if you look at black lesbians in townships, for example, so you have class, race, gender counting against you. Or if you look at gender diverse people, that's trans people, non-binary people, genderqueer people, and if you add class and race to that, it becomes a very different picture to what you see in, for example, upmarket white queer spaces.
Very interesting. Yeah. You know, I know that you're also a model, and you talk about society battling to accept, you know, the fact that you are transgender. Now, within that modeling world, is it different, or is the perception still the same, and do you have difficulties there?
I would say I don't necessarily do modeling, but I do presentation. For me, it's never really about the other platform, but it's about what I need as a person, as an activist, that I need to deliver. And I just want to quickly say something. You know, I listened to the president the other day speaking of LGBTI people at the Global Citizen Festival. And I thought to myself, I wonder what the president knows what a transgender person is. You know, and for me, it's a huge issue. I wonder, where do transgender people really work? You know, does he know where they work? And for me, even if they are models, do we have transgender people that really are models and work as transgender people? When are we going to get to a space where people work as they are themselves? You know, besides the opportunity that I create for myself, am I ever going to walk into a space and submit my CV and say, my name is Ayama Vundla, I'm qualified for so and so, I'm a transgender person, can I work as myself? It's impossible in South Africa. But then we say, here we are, we've got a beautiful constitution that says you can be yourself. And in terms of acceptance, I don't know, why do we keep saying we need to be accepted? Why can't people accept the fact that we are actually around?
Yes.
You know, I don't need to be accepted. I need people to accept that, you know what, I'm actually here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just as a parting shot, your message to South Africans, just to maybe influence them or try and change the perception that some people may have towards people living in the who are in the LGBTI community.
I really would like to say, you know what, fear is something that it was something that was shoved into us like years ago. And it's about time that, you know what, do not fear anything. Because for me, I say to you, people are going to tell you that you're going to lose your job if you don't do 1, 2, 3, and 4. But tell you what, you might be somebody else, and then you lose your job. And then what do? Do what really you believe in. do what you think is right and what you believe is right. Never really let somebody else really tell you what to do, and it's something that you don't believe in, because then you'd never succeed.
Thank you very much. That was model and activist Yaya Mavundla and researcher and activist Elliot Coetzee.